more than ever, users are using mobile phones first, and it's typically what we see across our merchants as well. The majority of traffic coming through to the site on mobile, but actually still the higher conversion rate is on desktops.
We are back with another episode of Selling Strategies, and today our episode is all about Shopify. So if you are selling on Shopify, or if you're considering switching from a BigCommerce or a Magento to Shopify, then this episode is for you. I'm with Kate Pryor from the wonderfully named Swanky.
That's it.
Do you just want to give a quick intro in terms of who you are and what Swanky does?
Yes, so Swanky is an international Shopify Plus agency. We work with merchants in the UK, US, we've got offices in Australia as well, so really merchants across the board, which is really exciting. And we support them with both migration projects and new builds, and then also ongoing retained services to really grow and optimize your Shopify stores. My role within that, so I'm a senior digital strategist, so I really work with those ongoing support retainers, thinking about how we prioritize activity and build off customer insights to really create a strategy for success that's going to really optimize your store and optimize how your business sells through Shopify, really. My real specialism within that is CRO, so conversion rate optimization. And that's where we really start thinking about things like testing programs, ways to optimize your AOV, and thinking about retention and pieces of that. I think all stuff that would be great to talk about today.
First question is just about getting started on Shopify. So how should newcomers approach using data to refine and measure their business goals?
So what's really great about Shopify is you get a lot of customer data out of the box. You can see what your cohorts look like, what are the average purchases in a lifetime, how many discount codes are being used. You can really start to drill in a lot of key metrics and understand what is your customer behavior looking like. Beyond that, though, we always advocate a really strong and data-driven strategy. So you need the data to be able to build that. One of the great things with Shopify is you can just plug in a nice GA4 integration. You can actually start seeing a lot of data within there and start to learn what are your top page views, where are your top exit pages, what are your top landing pages. You can start to get a lot of information about the customer journey through GA4. And within that, start seeing where are the opportunities. So where are users exiting? Where are they spending a lot of time? Where are they spending no time? So really starting to create a strategy which builds out the data that you're generating is really, really important. Beyond just what Shopify offers as well, you can consider other apps that plug in and integrate seamlessly with Shopify. So an example, which is free to use, would be Microsoft Clarity. Within that, you can start looking at things like heat maps, which allow you to see a little bit more about what users are doing on the page. So moving on from that more quantitative data to more qualitative data, you can start to interpret, think about things like introducing surveys, getting some real responses and feedback about your website, and then you can start matching and comparing the different data points. One of the really nice examples of a tech partner we've just started working with is Full Story, and they actually take that to the next level and track everything across your website. So everything that's being done on your website is being recorded, and you can actually see really clearly what your user interactions are and then what the impact those are having. Actually, is there a page on the website which has a bunch of error clicks, and you need to address those and actually make it so that more users are going through and they're creating a purchase. So actually thinking about what tech you want to employ to give you those insights about where your opportunities are on your site is really, really important to consider. And then obviously the other thing to think about is, once you've got all of that data, what do you do with it? So really thinking about grouping together those different opportunities and starting to create hypotheses based off where the common themes lie. So for example, if you've looked in your Shopify data and you've seen you've got a returns issue, if you then look at your GA4 data and you see actually we've got a really low engagement time on the FAQs page, and then you look in your full story data and you see actually we're seeing on that page users are unable to open one of our drop downs which explains how the return service works, then you can start seeing how how everything knits together and how you form a strategy to sort of start addressing those concerns. So thinking about everything cohesively, it's really, really important to start building out hypotheses, which you can then start ideating solutions around and testing and deploying those solutions to see what works.
A key part of that is going to be conversion rate optimization, whatever part of the journey on the site you are. So do you just want to give like a top level view of what like a CRO program is?
Yeah, so for CRO, when we're talking about conversion rate optimization, our goal there is really to consider how we increase the percentage of users who are engaging with a particular action on your site. So it might be that it's a sign up action. How many users come to your site and they sign up to your marketing? Is that your key metric? Or is it how many users that are coming to your site and adding something to the cart? Or most commonly, is it how many users coming to your site and transacting and making a purchase? So you can think about it as a multitude of different actions. And the way we like to think about it is across the customer lifecycle, you're probably going to be optimizing different parts of those actions. But really a program is centered around thinking about what are the key actions you're looking to increase and what activity can we do to increase that, and how do we do it in a data-led way, which helps us say, okay, we can see there's a problem here that marries up with the goal that we're trying to work towards. How do we test a change to see if we can improve that, and how can we learn from that change rather than just being blind going forwards thinking we know what's best before doing so.
And then, so what sort of influence does, we've spoken about there, it depends what you're measuring exactly, but what impact does that have on sales?
Yeah, so as we sort of said, it depends on the size of your business, it depends on your brand and your offering and what you're looking at there. But really we see the value in conversion rate optimized programs really stemming from having a testing mindset and a growth mindset. Why we advocate that is because we go into a conversion rate optimization program really trying to advocate our clients consider not having biases or, I guess, business-led assumptions about what they're doing as being the best for their business. With a conversion rate optimization program, you can actually look at what you're doing on Shopify, test something completely different or test something new and have a really data-backed view of what you're doing and understand if actually a change that you've made on the site or as part of the customer journey is actually generating value against those key goals. So I say that's part of what's really, really important. And it's really, really interesting because I think one of the assumptions that people have is that it needs to be a really heavy lift, and that's really, really not true. So with CRO, so one of the tests we run, for example, that we found was that actually just testing a change of where we're linking users through on the homepage for one of our brands, we found actually had a really significant uplift in the amount of conversions by just taking users through an initial different journey when they were landing on the homepage, and being able to use A/B testing, which is a common route for CRO programs, to actually test the current site versus a different variation which took users through a different user journey from that homepage, actually led us to think a little bit more about what should the true user journey be for the user from the homepage and what does actually work best. So I guess if you're missing that step, you're just really leaning on your own business's assumptions and you're kind of missing out on that missed revenue that you're sort of just not aware of, sort of like what is the best, I guess, customer journey for your users to go through. So really, I think just challenging assumptions is probably like the most value that CRO programs have, and it removes that sense of sort of bias from business decision making. I think the other thing I wanted to touch on as well is for Shopify users in particular, actually making those quick changes, leaning into the fact that it is a really easy to edit and customize platform. You can test really rapidly and quickly, and actually rather than just making a big change maybe in some other platforms such as Magento, which would be a little bit more significant to get a developer in to change maybe something that's on your website. Actually you can rapidly test small changes and see what that impact has, which is really, really useful for users. So I think that's really the way you've got to look at it, through that growth mindset, that we're willing to learn, we're willing to fail, we're willing to see what works, rather than just have assumptions based off how your Shopify store is performing at the moment.
A holy grail metric, really, once you get into the nitty gritty of it. So just, touching on that, can we get any actionable CRO tips as a Shopify Plus agency that you could feed out today?
So I think, as I was saying as well, so Shopify really is for like all different size brands and stores. So one of the great things with CROs, you can tailor your program based to the size of your business. So, for example, is it appropriate for you to do a lot of A/B testing? Do you have a really high volume of traffic? Are you going to see really clear results based off putting through users through different experiences and justifying which one of those performs best? But one of the things that I think we see very commonly across our merchants that come to us and we do this customer insights piece for is actually still there's that sort of like opportunity on mobile in particular to start thinking about CRO and how we optimize the mobile journey. Obviously, when we build a website as an agency, we always consider that mobile first approach, what a user's experience like as they're within the platform on their phone. We know now that more than ever users are using mobile phones first, and it's typically what we see across our merchants as well. The majority of traffic coming through to the site on mobile, but actually still the majority or the higher conversion rate is on desktop. So how do we really think about that and cater for that? One of the things that we always look at and consider of that mobile first journey is really what is your key viewport looking like? Do you have all CTAs in the right place? Can you test, placements and priority of information for users as they go through that user journey? Typically below the fold, we see a lot of users drop out. So as a sort of first port of call, optimizing for mobile is always really a good one to consider as part of your sort of testing strategy going forwards.
Yeah, it's interesting because since 2016, I think mobile traffic has eclipsed desktop. So, what's that, 7 years we've been a mobile first.
Yeah.
And yet that's where the open goals lie. That's where the opportunity lies in terms of still mobile conversion rates are low. Still the mobile experience is not quite where it needs to be. So yeah, it's interesting, bit of a lag.
And that's what we see. So when we're testing something quite small and actually the uplift is quite insignificant when you look at it on paper, just a 10% uplift or 5% uplift, but actually the amount of traffic that you've got on your website coming through mobile, if you can start tapping into those incremental gains, actually they're going to add up to big wins.
Absolutely.
Overall.
Okay, so let's talk retention, obviously a fundamental growth pillar for any e-commerce business. Are there any key retention tactics that you can suggest for a Shopify seller?
Yeah. So as we sort of said with CRO, it's never a one-size-fits-all approach. As we mentioned back at the beginning, thinking about the data available to you as a Shopify merchant, one of the key things is you can see a snapshot of where you are performing currently, what your customer retention looks like, how many users are coming back and making a repeat purchase. And what I ask with my clients is, does that make sense of where you are? Is it that you actually have a really, really high repeat purchase frequency? Potentially you're not a subscription brand. Maybe it's time to start thinking about a move into subscription if that makes sense for your vertical. If so, Shopify have made that easier than ever to be able to dip your toe in the water with their native functionality and test out whether a subscription model works for you. And that's obviously a great way to sort of start a retention strategy, but also learning more about those users that then go on to a subscription later on. If you're already on a subscription, then I really looking at actually, okay, how is this working for us? One of the biggest tech partners within the subscription space on Shopify is Recharge. We work with them a lot. And they've made it easier than ever to really understand why is a user churning, why are they skipping out, and they actively encourage their merchants to really think about their subscription strategies based off the data that you're getting from those users that are churning. They really define it between passive churn and active churn. So in the passive churn column, you have, is it an inventory problem? Is it a card decline problem? Is it just sort of a problem that has made it so that the user has to churn? And instantly you can start thinking, okay, like, is it a problem within our business that we need to address to reduce that churn rate? Active churn is much more the user's made the decision to cancel their purchase. Why has that happened? And with Recharge, again, just integrates beautifully with Shopify. They've really made it easy to then sort of learn more about what those active reasons are. So as soon as someone makes a decision to end their subscription, they will then ask them what those reasons are. Off the back of that, you can then direct different strategies to your users. So if they've said, actually, it's because the price is too high, then can you just set up an automated flow to target those users with a discount? So really starting to think about why it is a user's churning. Is it something within your operations, or is it something that potentially you can shift their mindset on? However, it also might be that you're actually got a really high purchase frequency, but you're not looking to go onto a subscription, but you do want to target users with products at the right time. Another tool that integrates with Shopify is one called Relo, and actually they work really, really nicely using your Shopify customer data to retarget users with recommendations around what they should be purchasing and when. And the way that works is it uses your customer data from within Shopify to base judgments off your future purchases and what would suit them based off what the rest of your cohort, your customer cohort is doing. So you can really nicely target users with a recommended product based off what other users bought, similar, who had a similar profile to that new user, which is really, really nice. At the other end of the spectrum, obviously you've got brands who maybe users aren't purchasing your product more than once, and I think really what you've got to do there is ask yourself, does that make sense? Do we have a product that is it makes sense for users to only purchase once, and what does our strategy want to look like from there? Do we want to think about product line expansion? Like, do we have something we could sell a really nice add-on product to really complement what we're already doing? Or do we want to think about getting more value out of those users through other users and start turning our customer base into advocates, which can then go on and refer you to their friends and create community and really generate value from the people they refer to your site in the future, if it's not perceived that your brand will really tap more out of them through purchases themselves. So it's really, retention is such a big one. It's one to really think, does it make sense where we are at the moment? And if it doesn't, then really actually factoring in what is the best strategy for us to take from here.
This is great. Lots of gold here, but obviously a big topic, and you have to be data-led. I think that's the key point. So moving on to another holy grail metric, as I like to call it, average order value.
Yeah.
Any specific tips that you can give to Shopify sellers who want to increase their average order value?
Yes, I think this is one Shopify is really paying attention to. In particular, is cost per acquisitions increasing. Really thinking about average order value has become more important than ever. And what they're doing is really trying to make it really easy for Shopify merchants to think about AOV as a key metric. One of the things they released just recently is the ability to create bundles of products within Shopify. So rather than having to set this up yourself with sort of like developers and sort of fancy ways around it, actually you can really easily link two products together within the back end and start selling those as products, as bundles of products instantly, which is really, really cool. The other thing they're also doing is their search and discover app, which also powers their recommendation algorithm, actually is better than ever in terms of being able to place recommendations to users at the right time of purchase, to be able to make a decision if they want to add a product on to what they're doing, or upsells to other products, which they might consider as they're looking at one in the purchase journey. So really there's a few little actionable nuggets with what is available to you within Shopify. I wanted to sort of just give a bit of an example on this one as well. So we've been working recently with a furniture store, and we think about how we can drive AOV in a few different ways when we've been working with that brand. So is it that we have a really generic product upsell, in this case a fabric care kit, which users can add on. It's the same that they could use across any of their sofa line. They can just add it on. It's really simple, a great way just to boost average order value as the user's added to cart already and they just want to add an extra product on. Thinking at the next level, could we then get a little bit more specific and targeted with our recommendations to increase AOV? Can we use product data to actually manipulate what we're targeting to users? And one example there is what we're currently looking at, being able to, if you're on a specific sofa, then target them with the specific footstool and the specific colours and variants, to actually match what sofa you're looking at and actually really show a nice tailored recommendation based off the product you're looking at. So really what you can do with the data that you have in Shopify is set up rules and conditions to then be more targeted with your recommendations, and you can have a lot higher rate of success when that's the case. Then the other strategy is to get more personalized than that as well, and start thinking about potentially using third-party tech at this stage to then start actually looking at what that specific user should be seeing. So beyond just the product or the generic recommendations here, but actually these are the products that you recently looked at, or these products we think are complementary to what you're looking at. We suggest these as add-ons rather than anything you've predefined based off your own assumptions again. So I think it's really interesting to look at it at different layers and what would suit your business most, like a really generic upsell or something a little bit more personalized and considered.
Are there any specific results you could share with regards to the personalized add-ons or the bundles?
Yeah, so one thing we did with one of our clients, we actually found that bundling was like a really significant opportunity for them. They sold a lot of one product, and we found actually adding the ability to add on an accessory could significantly increase their overall revenue they were driving from that product, rather than just promoting it as a single item. So one thing that we did is actually transform the typical product page that you get on Shopify as your standard template, and think about a way we could recraft it and design more of like a bundle builder solution, so users could actually put together, I want this specific product and I want to have it in the matching accessory, and match those together and be able to go on and buy that bundle. And what we found by positioning the user journey as a bundle creation process, actually users were 30% more likely to convert versus than those going through the typical product page, because they'd actually been able to see clearly what they were doing, build a personalized product bundle that actually suited what they wanted to buy. They felt more comforted by the user journey going through that perhaps, and actually it was a lot better converting than we saw across the typical product page. So I think rather than just confining yourselves to what's native and out of the box as a business, you can also start thinking, actually, do we want to challenge those basic templates that we start out with, and thinking a little bit more out of the box? Do we want to create something custom? Do we want to think about what's next? And I think, as we said previously, like a lot of people have that assumption, but what can I do on Shopify versus other platforms such as Magento, and that ability to really customize and create sort of more bespoke experiences. It's not necessarily shut off as for those Shopify users, it's just something to move on to and add on to after you've created that initial store. So really cool examples that we had there.
So the consumer landscape changing all the time, as you know, even just the last few years, we've seen the rise of social selling. Brand loyalty is waning because price is becoming such a dominant factor in purchasing decisions.
Yeah,
we've also seen sustainability become a must-have as opposed to a nice-to-have. So how do Shopify sellers, or how do you advise that they adapt in the face of these changes?
So one of the big things that I think we will see is that brands will really need to think about how they're communicating their USPs and their brand offering to really cut through the noise and actually stand out from other merchants out there. What we're seeing is that fatigue. Users are getting a lot more ads per day. They're seeing the same tactics over and over again. How do we actually really cut through that, and how do we create something users want to engage with? And when we consider authenticity as the sort of flip side of that, how do we actually really create trust in what we're saying, what those USPs are and what that offering is? How do we really validate that, and how do we create a sense of authenticity and the subsequent trust that users feel once they get that sense of authenticity from you as a brand? On the flip side of that, again, is thinking about how you can lead into automation and emerging tech will be a huge thing as we consider this sort of changing landscape in e-commerce over the next couple of years. I mean, it already is. E-commerce teams really need to think about how they're going to lean into AI, how they're going to lean into machine learning and actually get it to work with them rather than work against them. So is it that you use machine learning algorithms to help with the budget, your forecasting and your budgeting as part of your marketing team? Is it that you use AI to support with your chatbot services and actually provide feedback? But as you're considering all these strategies and leaning into them, you'll also need to think, does this work for our brand? Does it help promote our authenticity and build trust, or does it start to eat away at that? And that will really vary differently, brand by brand, in terms of how that works. We actually have a tangible example of this with one of the clients that I've worked with directly. We actually found that using more machine-driven algorithm to produce product recommendations on the product page for one of our luxury brands actually didn't work as well as when they were using sort of the more hand-picked version of what products users should see on a product page, which was really interesting. So almost that experience which emulates being in store where the customer service representative is there saying, you should get this one. Actually, we couldn't yet match that experience using sort of a machine-driven version of those recommendations. And we actually found through a conversion rate test that actually users converted higher when they were given the recommendations driven by the team. And I think that reflects the fact that it's a luxury brand, and that actually curated touch is what was the gold dust there, is what makes the value of that brand. So I think really actually probably taking those two pieces and considering how it sits for your business and what weighting you need to give each, leaning into brand and authenticity, but also leveraging machine learning and leveraging emerging tech to actually make some of your existing workflows easier will be really important.
So we've been talking about newcomers to Shopify or businesses that are already established and selling on Shopify. But what about anyone who might be considering switching to Shopify from a Magento or a BigCommerce? What key factors would you say that they need to keep in mind?
One of the things that we see is a biggest reason for users wanting to move over from one of those other platforms is really the ability of Shopify just to be so flexible. The options that you have at pretty much no to low code to be able to customize your storefront actually really enables your e-commerce teams to actually have power over what your store is doing and how it syncs with your marketing activity and your wider strategy, rather than having to have really dev heavy platforms and solutions. Actually, Shopify allows anyone to really sort of take ownership and be able to sort of customize and amend that storefront to really work for you. Then move to be more section led and allow users to really use a drag and drop customizer to build and edit pages, really empowering teams to be able to customize and create content that really works for their stores at any given time. So I think that's one of the things that we see most often, the ability just to sort of get away from legacy tech to solutions which are a little bit easier to manage, particularly for those who maybe aren't as technical or don't want to invest in a big technical cost or team to really keep the hygiene of those other platforms up to scratch and where it needs to be. So one of the things that Shopify has really done is make it so easy for your e-commerce managers to be able to actually really take control of the website without a single touch of code. One of the things that we worked with one of our clients is setting up this sort of VIP portal within Shopify. One of the other things as well, I think it's got a lot of shout about recently in the media as well, as the Shopify checkout. I don't think we can avoid really talking about that. Obviously, they've put the comms out there that actually their checkout is now converting up to 36 times better than other platforms available on the market. So really, merchants seeing that is really driving their decision to really come to us and think about a checkout that works for them. Shopify also recently launched their one-page checkout, so having that flexibility to switch between checkout models and be able to test what works for you in quite a straightforward fashion. Just click of a button really in the back end to be able to make that switch over. Really easy for merchants to trial different checkout models. So a lot of consideration, also just thinking about those Shopify first proven templates and frameworks that work. You can't really say no to that.
That checkout data is pretty damn compelling. And then there's also that study touches on, is it Shop Pay, and how Shop Pay actually lifts lower funnel conversions by about 5% itself. Yeah. And what about data complexity for people moving from a BigCommerce and Magento, I guess, because that's going to be one of the biggest things that would be holding them back from moving.
Yeah, so that's another big one that we see, that if you are on a platform like Magento, obviously you likely have a lot of customization within that, which means you have a lot of data which is working to custom endpoints. So actually really, when you are making a move, considering how much of that custom data there is to think about and how that is going to fit into the Shopify framework, and whether your team are ready to take on that challenge. So there are considerations to be made, particularly if you're for example, a B2B business, are you going to be able to achieve all of the functionality that you've had on your existing platform? And another thing to consider. But yeah, really, that's what we help our merchants who come to us and say they're looking to make the move to do, to actually figure out, does that fit, and can they manage the lift, and what strategy can they take for that data migration piece? Right,
last question. So I just want to know, how is Shopify evolving and what's it going to look like selling on the platform, we're at the beginning of 2024 for this year and beyond?
So one of the big things is really Shopify and its connectivity as part of an ecosystem and working for different brands of different sizes and their different goals. So really making sure all of your channels are integrated with Shopify. So whether it's point of sale services, where it's using Shopify Markets, which allows you to sell more seamlessly than ever across borders. Or thinking also more about that if you're actually a business which is going to benefit from Shopify's B2B offering, really Shopify is working across like all these different areas and different channels and propositions for you to make everything as seamless as possible. So really being connected and part of that wider ecosystem for our merchants, really looking to put itself at the center of that and connecting the dots across all of those. Another big one that we think about and talk about is just looking to become simpler and easier than ever for merchants to use. And as we said previously, e-commerce teams, which potentially less technical, being able to manage the back end, being able to edit the storefronts, being able to use their documentation to actually find answers to questions really quickly. One of the big things that they've done is actually a partnership with OpenAI, which has allowed them to create this chatbot service. So your team can go in and find out questions to how they use Shopify themselves and actually get those responses quicker than ever. So actually managing a storefront on Shopify itself just becoming easier than ever for merchants to do. So you're not hitting roadblockers and it's becoming that seamless experience both for you and then in turn your customers.
Right, that's all of the questions. I feel like I'm ready to start a business on Shopify now. So thanks for coming down, Kate. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. If you do start a business, come and work with Swanky.
Thank you.